Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Exploring the Lord of the Rings. It is session 50 tonight. This is our 50th class session of this series, and I seem to remember joking that it was going to take us, more than 50 sessions to get through the Lord of the Rings, and here we are about halfway through chapter 9 after 50 sessions, but it's all good. I hope that you guys will let me know. One thing I just wanted to kind of warn you about in advance, I'm experimenting with a new piece of audio software, sort of audio routing software tonight. So my hope is that, you're hearing everything as usual. And if anything is kind of wonky, tell me. So just asking for your help there. Okay, so first I wanted to start off by thanking everybody who either watched or ran along with me in my trip to Mordor this past Saturday. I had a great time. Of course, I started in the form of a chicken, I got ambushed by this stealth Mumak, right? This Mumak came out of nowhere, man, and trampled me. It was fine, because as I was explaining on Twitter afterwards, sightseeing way more important than survival. I mean, that's pretty much a rule for me when I'm doing Lotro streams. So yeah, I'm not big into self-preservation. A little peek at the roof of Osgiliath's was totally worth the mortality of my chicken, and it was fine. Because yeah, Valora, you're absolutely right. Mumak they're very stealthy. They can sneak up on you like nobody's business. But anyway, it was fine. Wiggin resumed human form, and I did make it to Mordor, so I did get to go all the way out. It was great. I saw the camp of the captains as they're getting ready to assault the Black Gates. I got to see the Black Gates themselves. I went into Mordor and all the way down through Dune. We climbed up to on Mount Doom itself. Really, really neat. So I think the inside of Mordor is really fascinating. One of the things that I'm really looking forward to when I get slightly higher level, Wiggin is too low level to do too much exploring randomly around, lest he get pounced upon and slaughtered. But anyway, I could see them from a distance, and I'm really looking forward to what they do with the Númenórean structures which Sauron has taken over. Right, looking at like the different architectural levels of that, looking at sort of like the Númenórean underlayer, and then the uses that Sauron and his orcs are putting it to. It's going to be really, really neat. It was fun just to see that from a distance, actually, some of the Númenórean structures that have been repurposed by Sauron. So I'm really looking forward to the way that they sort of have built that story and the way that they flesh out those areas in that way. So anyway, so that's... I quite enjoyed Mordor. I'm looking forward to Northern Mirkwood, which they're going to be releasing soon, and I'm sure we'll do another exploratory trip into Northern Mirkwood too when we get there. So anyway, so again, thanks to everybody who did that. The videos on our Twitch channel, we'll be posting it to YouTube as well, so that'll be fun. Anyway, just a couple quick. A couple quick announcements. First, I wanted to make sure to remind everybody that I'm doing the War of the Ring. We're doing Volume 8 of the History of Middle-earth, Volume 3 of the History of the Lord of the Rings. We did Helm's Deep last week, and oh my goodness, I am telling you, if you have never read this book, and a lot of people don't read these books, which is totally understandable, but if you've never read this before, you should absolutely go to YouTube and watch last week's video where I went through the sort of the highlights of the original draft material of Helm's Deep. My goodness, holy cow. The original version of the Battle of Helm's Deep is so exciting. Oh my gosh, there are so many moments that he ended up cutting out. He ended up kind of going in a different direction with the Battle of Helm's Deep. And I love the Battle of Helm's Deep, but wow, the original version completely blows me away. So I can't recommend that enough if you are at all a Helm's Deep fan like I am. And this week we're going to be looking at the initial encounter with Saruman, the sort of the development of the ideas of the Ents and their interactions with Saruman and their role there and everything. So that's this week. Slightly less epic than the Battle of Helm's Deep, but still really fun to see how the stories develop there. So anyhow, that's going to be tomorrow, Wednesday evening, 10 p.m. Will be our second session on the War of the Ring. And then Thursday night, I'm doing a special session. I am a member of the panel in the Mythgard Movie Club, which is going to be talking about the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy movie. And because I just did the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy in the Mythgard Academy. We read through the book and we talked about the original audio drama and the radio drama. And now we're going to be talking about the film with some of the regular panelists of the Mythgard Movie Club. So that's going to be Thursday night at 8:30 p.m. And that will be broadcast on Twitch, and you can also you can join our GoToWebinar session there as well and everything. So go to signumuniversity.org and scroll down a little bit, and you'll be able to see the event page for that. So you can get all the information you need on our Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy movie discussion on Thursday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. Good. And I think, let's see, was that it? Was that all I wanted to talk about? I think that was all I wanted to talk about. Yeah, that's good. Just a reminder, the last thing, I am going to be out next week. So don't forget, I'll be away all next week. So there'll be no Exploring Lord of the Rings, no Mythgard Academy next week. I'm going to be missing both of my next two Grifflet sessions because I'll be gone both this coming Friday and the Friday after that. I just wanted to remind you, I'm going away. It's a sort of a little kind of family retreat thing. So I'll be away with my family for the next week, having a good time, kind of recharging, and then I'll be back in March for another fun month of class discussion and stuff. So anyway, all right. So let us jump into back into the text here today. One really quick notes and queries slide at the beginning here tonight. And I have to admit, although this one is very short, I will freely confess that this completely blew my mind. Totally blew my mind. I mean, my mind was blown. An important new acquaintance I have optimistically titled this class because I am optimistically hoping we're going to get to Strider tonight, of course, which I think we will because it's only like 2 slides in, so who knows. But anyway, okay. Saxo Runesinger, awesome name, asks, is there any textual evidence that Bob of the Prancing Pony is a hobbit? And I was just staring at this question, suddenly doubting my entire worldview. Because, okay, I will admit, I've always, my entire life, assumed that Bob was a hobbit. Always assumed that Bob was a hobbit. From my earliest years, Nob and Bob, the hobbit servants at the Prancing Pony, was like my assumption, right? And, so he has this question, I'm like, of course Bob's a hobbit. What kind of question is that? And then I'm like, no, darn it. No, there is no textual evidence that Bob is a hobbit. There is none. There's no proof. There's an utter lack of evidence. The only piece of evidence that indirectly suggests that Bob is a hobbit is the fact that his name rhymes with Nob. Now, Nob is explicitly a hobbit, right? Because he's the one who comes, he's described as a hobbit, and he's the one who comes in and is amazed with, when he sees is very interested when he sees the hobbits from the Shire. He's the one whom Butterbur calls woolly-footed, right? He's a woolly-footed slow coach in the Fellowship of the Ring. In the Return of the King, Butterbur is going to call him a woolly-pated ninny. So the curly hair on his head and the curly hair on his feet, Nob is very hobbit, right? But Bob is not, there's no direct evidence that Bob is a hobbit. He's just not. Now, but that doesn't prove that he isn't a hobbit. There just is, it doesn't say that he is, right? So now, and so this made me then kind of question, my life as I look back and I'm, because I've always pictured Bob to be a hobbit. I mean, it's always, it's like literally today is the first day in my life I've ever even questioned the possibility of Bob's being a hobbit. And I'm like, going back through my life and trying to figure like why. So why have I always believed, that Bob is a hobbit? My uncomfortable answer to that question is simply the fact that it rhymes with nub. Like that's the only thing, that led me to believe that. So I think this means, now, it doesn't say that he's not either. There's no evidence that he's a human either. The only kind of indirect evidence that you could point to suggest that Bob is human is that he's an ostler, and an ostler would be kind of an easier, he works with the horses, which would be sort of an easier job for one of the big folk than for a hobbit. I guess. Yeah, I suppose so. That certainly doesn't prove that he's one of the big folk, but I guess you could kind of build a case for it from that. At the same time, there was some discussion, on the thread when Saxo Runesinger posted this mind-blowing question on the discussion board. There was some discussion later on in the thread about so when in the Return of the King, remember Bob's not there because he goes home to his folks, to his people. He goes home to his family at night. Now, in the troubled times at Bree, no suggestion that, that's not clear evidence one way or the other, right? That Bob is a hobbit or human being, but could equally apply in either case. But one person, I forget who it was bringing up the fact that, Butterbur mentions about, since Bob's not there, that Gandalf is gonna, want to take care of Shadowfax himself. The implication being that, Bob is, Nob can't do it because he's too small and Shadowfax is huge. He can take care of the Hobbit's ponies, but he can't take care of Shadowfax. He can't reach the saddle. So, Gandalf needs to do it himself. And this is Butterbur's polite way of saying, my ostler's out. Can you please help with that and take care of your own horse, Gandalf? But I don't believe so. Actually, I find myself unconvinced by that argument for two reasons. First of all, I don't think it is physical convenience, or I don't think that Butterbur is sort of discreetly and politely asking for Gandalf's assistance or sort of indirectly apologizing for his lack of service at the inn by saying to Gandalf, and you'll be wanting to take care of, of your horse yourself, Gandalf. I think he's doing that because, JJ, exactly. Shadowfax wouldn't stand for anybody else to touch him, right? Gandalf will want to see to Shadowfax himself because Shadowfax only talks to Gandalf, right? Remember, Shadowfax wouldn't even let any of the other Rohirrim handle him. He was off like running wild in the field. After they arrived, nobody could stable him. He just took off running across the fields, and Gandalf had to whistle for him, right? And when Theoden was gonna gift him to him, right? So, I think that, it's interesting when Gandalf delegates Pippin to go check on Shadowfax in Minas Tirith. You may remember Gandalf asks him on the first morning that they're there, could you go to the stables and check and make sure everything is okay with Shadowfax, right? And it's like he's been delegated by Gandalf, so Shadowfax will talk to him, right? But it's kind of an issue. Anyway, so I always understood, given the whole like only the kings of the mark can ride the Mayaris, and he won't let anyone else handle him. So I always assumed that remark by Butterbur is a reference to the fact, because this is, of course, the second time that Gandalf with Shadowfax has been to the Prancing Pony, and I presume that always assumed that meant that the first time he was there, he insisted on taking care of Shadowfax himself, even when Bob was on the premises, because he's not just gonna toss Shadowfax to a country ostler and say take care of it. Shadowfax wouldn't have it. So I think that Matt, I think that Butterbur knows that from the last time, right? He remembers Gandalf made a big point about like, I'm gonna take care of Shadowfax myself, and Butterbur, recalling that, just says, oh, and Gandalf, I assume you'll be wanting to take care of Shadowfax yourself, right? Because that's what he did last time. So I think. And Harnuth, you're absolutely right. Shadowfax, of course, has carried Pippin to Minas Tirith, so he is going to know and be familiar with Pippin by then. As far as like, this is somebody clearly whom Gandalf has brought in, right? Anyway, yeah. So I don't think it's a convenience thing, and I certainly don't really take it as evidence. Besides which, could a hobbit be an ostler to full-size horses? Sure, yeah. I mean, he'd need a step stool or something, and he'd need a little ladder, but he could do it, right? I mean, whatever. Anyhow, I don't find that, as I say, a particularly compelling argument. I really don't see any, sort of clear, obvious, compelling evidence one way or the other. It doesn't really say who Bob is. And this is actually an interesting and indirect piece of evidence about the kind of mixing of the races that we were talking about before, right? About the two different peoples in Bree, because the fact that it never even specifies, right? Yeah, Gallandar, that's exactly right. Gallandar says Bob may be the only character in The Lord of the Rings that we can have this debate about, given the unique living arrangements in Bree. Exactly. Nowhere else are we going to be asking, is this guy a hobbit or is he human? Yeah, anyway, I don't know. I'm still going to carry on thinking that Bob is a hobbit, and I'm not going to apologize for it either. And I know the because their names rhyme thing is kind of weak. When I was really forced to, consider the ground upon which I was standing, I will freely confess that it is fairly shaky. But that's kind of what I got, actually. And I don't see any stronger evidence that he's a human. The fact that they're spoken of as like a unit, Nob and Bob, suggests to me that there's, the fact that no distinction is made at all suggests to me that they probably are both hobbits. So I'm as I say, I'm going to still carry on thinking that. But Saxo Runesinger, thank you for asking the question and opening my eyes to the fact that I've been taking that absolutely for granted for my entire life. And pointing out this particular problem. So anyway, there's my wholly unsatisfactory answer to, well, no, my answer is satisfactory. No, there's no solid evidence. But that's totally fine. Tony suggests that, a Hobbit narrator would probably tell you he was human if he was. It does kind of seem to me, Tony, that especially given that Nob, whom we meet first, right, of the servants of the prince, we're the only two of them ever named, right, and the first one that we meet is a hobbit, and then there's the other servant whose name rhymes with the hobbit servant, and it's never specified that the other one is one of the big folk. That's why again I sort of operate under the assumption that, I think that those are exactly the factors that led me to think, well, if it doesn't say, then he's probably a hobbit, right? But anyway, so we'll see. But again, if you are in the, Bob is one of the big folk people, It's okay. I still accept you. I think we can still be friends. It's fine. It's good. We can all, come to a mutual understanding, I think. But there we are. Okay. Well, see, so Sharon, that's a really interesting question. Sharon is asking, is there anything from the histories, from the manuscript, like from the Return of the Shadow, that suggested? And here's the problem, Sharon. Of course, in the early drafts, everybody's a hobbit, right? Bree was a hobbit town. Butterbur was a hobbit. Everybody was a hobbit. The Prancing Pony, 100% populated by hobbits in the very first drafts. Strider was a hobbit, right? As well. Everybody were hobbits. So when it gets changed, some of them are made, of course, humans eventually. But it doesn't necessarily help us to decide whether or not Bob in this version has been made into a human again. Amathorn Strider was totally a hobbit who wore wooden shoes, and his name was Trotter, not Strike, Trotter, not Strider. And that was true for a long time, even after he became first a man, and then a Dunedain, and then the long-lost king. He still was called Trotter for the longest time. But Torlonia, Aragorn was a horse briefly. That was a fun period of his existence, but that passed fairly quickly. Amathorn, it's really cool. I strongly recommend the Return of the Shadow and the Treason of Isengard discussions that I've already done. They're long. It's like 16 or 17 2-hour. Not by Exploring the Lord of the Rings standards, but I've got their 2-hour sessions and 16, 17 sessions each for the Return of the Shadow and the Treason of Isengard. But we go through those books and look at the development of Tolkien's story. It's some pretty trippy stuff and really, really, really interesting things. Okay, so Gallandar, you're right. The one thing I think we can all agree on is that Bob does not have wings. So that at least is something that we can always remember. All right, let's get back to the common room now. Okay, so we had just talked about. So we had Frodo with his interesting cover story about writing a book. Right, and his relationship with the other hobbits, and then we shift sort of outwards, and especially to the men and dwarves, the non-hobbits in the room. The men and dwarves were mostly talking of distant events and telling news of a kind that was becoming only too familiar. There was trouble away in the south, and it seemed that the men who had come up the Greenway were on the move, looking for lands where they could find some peace. The Bree folk were sympathetic, but plainly not very ready to take a large number of strangers into their little land. One of the travelers, a squint-eyed, ill-favored fellow, was foretelling that more and more people would be coming north in the near future. "If room isn't found for them, they'll find it for themselves. They've a right to live, same as other folk," he said loudly. The local inhabitants did not look pleased at the prospect. The hobbits did not pay much attention to all this, as it did not at the moment seem to concern hobbits. Big folk could hardly beg for lodgings in hobbit holes. They were more interested in Sam and Pippin, who were now feeling quite at home, and were chatting gaily about events in the Shire. Pippin roused a good deal of laughter with an account of the collapse of the roof of the town hall in Mickle Delving. Will Whitfoot, the mayor, and the fattest hobbit in the West Farthing, had been buried in chalk, and came out like a floured dumpling. But there were several questions asked that made Frodo a little uneasy. One of the Bree-landers, who seemed to have been in the Shire several times, wanted to know where the Underhills lived and who they were related to. And by the way, as we kind of mentioned this last time, right? But, one of the things we can plainly see from the discussion of how our four hobbits behave in the Inn at Bree is that they're really not good at going undercover, right? And one of the things that immediately becomes plain is that if Frodo is going to pretend, taking a traveling name is one thing, right? But if you're going to introduce yourself by a traveling name to other hobbits, you at best not only make up a name for yourself, but make up a convincing genealogy, right? Because they're going to want to know about your family history, and it's made even more awkward by the fact that he meets other Underhills, right? Who assume that they're related. So, it seems that Frodo hasn't really thought this through quite as fully as perhaps he should have. Good. Now let's focus on the first paragraph here first, about the distant events and the news of a kind that was becoming only too familiar. One of the things that we see here, of course, is the intrusion of the outside world upon the land of Bree, and as I suggest in my slide title here, "They cannot forever shut them out," is reminiscent of. I was reminded, of course, of the conversation between Gildor and Frodo, right, about how the Shire hobbits have tried to shut the world, have tried to shut the world out, and Gildor says you can shut yourself in, but you can't forever shut it out. And the Bree-landers seem to be having the same experience here, right? The outside world is already coming. The outside world has come to the Shire in the form of the Black Riders, which is pretty scary form for it in which for it to come. But even the Bree-landers are they're struggling with it in a different form. Okay, the Black Riders are there too, but they're having these different issues, right? And so what exactly are their issues, right? The issues are the strangers that are coming up the Greenway. There's all these refugees, right? And it's clear that it's kind of mixed, right? So Tony, it's a great question. Tony says in the timeline, is this due to the attacks on Gondor that Boromir and Faramir fought in? No, these are nearer. These would seem to be the people who are being displaced and who are coming north and ending up here at Bree. Seem to be displaced not by Sauron, but by Saruman. In fact. And of course we know that now Galandar was just asking the same thing. Do we know where they come from? We're not told specifically. But they've come up from the south, and I can't imagine they've come all the way from Gondor or Rohan. There's no real indication of that, actually. So what, right? So where can they come from? Most likely they're coming up from just further south, right? But why are they coming at all, right? They're coming because of the unrest that Saruman is creating in his army recruitment and things like that. We know Saruman is sending people into the north, right? Some of the people, right? So some of the folks who have ended up at Bree, as we're told, are honest refugees, but some of them are in fact spies and servants of Saruman who are coming up to stir up trouble. Right, so Pontin and Tony, Enid Wyeth, Northern Dunland, that seems to be where these people are coming from. Are they Dunlendings? I doubt it. I would think that the Dunlendings would probably look stranger to the Bree-landers than these people seem to. They're called strangers, but they're not. They don't talk about them like wild men. Wild men is what the Dunlendings are called consistently later on, when we meet them at the Battle of Helm's Deep and stuff. So I doubt that they're actually Dunlendings, but there seem to be some people. Remember, there's Sarnford, right? Which was a city, and I mean it's not like that whole area has been mostly abandoned, but I guess possibly not completely abandoned, right? Man of Rohan asks, would they look stranger than goblin men? Well, yes, they would, actually, I think, because the goblin men who have come north as spies of Saruman are specifically being incognito, right? They are trying to blend in with the others. the reason that the Dunlendings are called wild men, I assume is due to their, they're like, they dress very differently. They look, their clothing looks more primitive. I think actually Lotro does this really well. They wear like skins and they're tattooed and things. They look alien. They look, it's not weird, right? It's not strange to think that people, like from the Rohirric perspective, would see these people and call them wild men, right? And characterize them that way. Anyway, so I think would seem to work. So Tony, yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that the story within Lotro about Dunland and what Saruman is doing in Dunland, there's very, very little direct evidence about what Saruman is doing there. But it seems to me a very logical extrapolation. Yeah, as Davis on Twitter was just saying, the Dunlendings are kind of Pict-ish. Yeah, exactly. Sort of Celtic. That too is how Lotro has gone with them, and that seems to me entirely sensible. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. They are as the Celts to the Romans or Anglo-Saxons, Tony. Absolutely. Yeah, if the Gondorians are kind of like the Romans and the Rohirrim are kind of like the Anglo-Saxons, the Dunlendings are kind of like the Picts, or like the Irish even. Exactly. Yeah, something like that. So anyway, so it's very hard for me to imagine that somebody who is at that kind of a cultural remove from the culture that we see in Bree would not make a little bit more of a sensation. If anything, the sort of the squint-eyed the fact that these goblin men from Isengard who are among them are called ill-favored, right? That's not complimentary, right? It means he's ugly. He's squint-eyed, ill-favored. But it's still actually kind of kind for, in a sense, if you know what I mean. I mean, it's not, they don't rear back from him like, oh, there's something very strange about him. They're like, okay, this dude is not handsome, right? But again, that's kind of it seems to me, it strikes me as a kind of almost, I don't know if generous is quite the right word, but it's a tactful way of describing him, right? They don't look at him and they say like, he is strange, he is alien, and almost certainly hostile. Yeah, Tony, the people coming up from the south, the refugees, I would assume they would be more like the Woodmen or the Beornings, somebody like that. That seems to me sensible. Presumably, they are, descendants of the people who lived there under the sort of shield of Arnor, as they were in that area. And Davis, no, I think ill-favored just means ugly. I mean, like, his face is ugly. This is a homely chap, right? I'm pretty sure. I mean, that's what ill-favored means. But again, it's a relatively tactful way of saying that this guy is really, really ugly. Yeah. So anyhow, I think that the reaction of the Bree-landers to the people coming up is interesting, right? In that they have a kind of balanced reaction to them, right? On the one hand, they're not ready to take a large number of strangers into their little land. They're clearly distrustful of strangers, and they're not excited about strangers coming in. But at the same time, they're not like totally xenophobic either, right? They're not like outlanders, you're not wanted here. They are sympathetic, right? And they're, they seem to be generally accepting of them. Again, they don't treat them hostile. There's no hostility, right? They welcome, they come to the Pony, right? And they're staying at the Pony. They're in the common room. But they're so, but at the same time, they're not just like, we love and accept everyone. So I think it's interesting. They're sort of middle ground there. We do see that the Bree-landers, they're isolated, right? So they are sort of distrustful of strangers, but they also seem to be a little bit more comfortable with the idea than, for instance, Shire hobbits would be, right? Yeah. And Tony Butterbur does certainly seem to appreciate the business. He's he does not sound he definitely kind of talks about it in that context, right? JJ, as long as they don't make trouble, they're okay with it. And they do seem to worry that trouble is going to come of this, right? Again, they're not wholly unsuspicious. They're not totally welcoming. They're not comfortable with the strangers entirely, but they're not hostile either. They do have a gate watch at night. Mad Violinist, I agree. That does suggest, a little bit of caution. I agree. Yeah, exactly, Tony. They would be less surprised by strangers because of their location. Yeah. And yes, Blue Wizard, I do think it's fair to say that the appearance of Frodo's company is a big deal, less because they're strangers than because they're from the Shire, and that's uncommon now. Absolutely. Yeah. And in some ways, you can see that the hobbits, it's clearly an especially big deal among the hobbits of Bree, right? Notice that I can see, I think that we can detect a clear sort of hobbit bias, right? We've talked some places about like where can we see the evidence of who wrote the story, Frodo and Sam's writing the story or whatever. But here I think that we can, right? When they talk about the company in the common room and the welcome that they received, it's clear that it's primarily the hobbits that are welcoming them. The hobbits are taking them to their hearts. The Underhills are taking them to their heart like long lost, like a long lost cousin, right? The conversations that they're having are clearly conversations with other hobbits. This paragraph suggests the men and the dwarves are still kind of talking among themselves, right? While the hobbits are not talking of distant events and telling news of a kind that was becoming all too familiar, right? The hobbits are talking to Sam and to Pippin and to Frodo, and talking about the Shire because they're really excited about this. So a sensation has been created among the hobbits, but the men and the dwarves seem to be having their normal conversation, right? So notice that the hobbits kind of consider the refugee issue irrelevant to them, at least a little bit irrelevant to them, because the refugees can't it's in the next paragraph there, right? It didn't seem to concern hobbits. Big folk could hardly beg for lodgings in hobbit holes, right? So it's not relevant to them. A visit from the Shire, though, that's very relevant to them, right? Good. Okay. So the hobbits don't even pay much attention because they think that it's irrelevant, which shows they're not really interested in what's happening in the outside world at all for itself, right? And perhaps even the Bree-landers, even the men, are only really concerned in as much as they're worried about how it's going to impact them. Are a lot of people going to be coming up? Are there going to be land issues, right? They're going to want to settle here? Are they going to move on? Are going to have people building a home on their land, right? I mean, that's what they're worried about. Yes, and Matt, you're right. The Bree-land hobbits view the Shire as a colony, right? So yeah, absolutely. It's an especial curiosity to meet Shire hobbits for that reason. Okay, let's keep going. Suddenly, here we go, right? We made it. Suddenly, Frodo noticed that a strange-looking, weather-beaten man, sitting in the shadows near the wall, was also listening intently to the hobbit talk. He had a tall tankard in front of him, and was smoking a long-stemmed pipe curiously carved. His legs were stretched out before him, showing high boots of supple leather that fitted him well, but had seen much wear and were now caked with mud. A travel-stained cloak of heavy, dark green cloth was drawn close about him, and in spite of the heat of the room, he wore a hood that overshadowed his face, but the gleam of his eyes could be seen as he watched the hobbits. "Who is that?" Frodo asked, when he got a chance to whisper to Mr. Butterbur. "I don't think you introduced him." Okay. What do we notice in the description of Strider? Right? What does the narrator emphasize? Right? What does the narrator emphasize when we meet Strider? Right? Strange-looking, weather-beaten man. His weather-beatenness, right, is one of the primary elements of him. He is... Good. Lots of great observations here. His clothes are worn, but from use, not from poor care. Yes, exactly, JJ. He doesn't look slovenly, right? He's not just untidy. He's been around, right? The mud that's caked on his boots, the stains on his cloak, even his posture, right, as with his legs stretched out in front of him, suggesting that he's resting from a lot of walking, right? It shows his how much he's been around, right? JJ points out he's not minding his own affairs, so he's not a Bree-man. Yes, and Marianne, I agree. The fact that he's wearing the cloak, the fact that he's apparently trying to conceal his face, is interesting, right? It's a little bit odd that he is not only does he have his cloak on, but he's wrapped it around himself, in spite of the heat of the room. It's a hot room, and his dress is inappropriate, right? He looks shady, right? There's something strange about this guy. He seems to be trying to hide himself. And yes, the curiously carved pipe, right? Now I agree that we have the fact that his clothes are good, right? Lincoln was pointing to this. Tony was pointing to this. The fact that he doesn't seem to be poor. His clothes are worn. Nothing he's wearing is new, but he's not poor either, right? Again, so this is not just this is not just a tramp, right? He has a heavy dark green cloak. His boots are of supple leather that fitted him well. And very well broken him. And then there's that pipe, right? So he's smoking. That seems to be not unusual in Bree, right? Smoking is fairly general in Bree, so the mere fact of his smoking is not strange. But Frodo immediately notices his strange pipe, right? He's got a strange and fancy pipe. We don't know what that means, right? But again, it suggests that there's something interesting about him, right? Why does he have such a weird pipe? Anyway, Doug, I also love the phrase, the gleam of his eyes, his eyes gleaming within the shadow of his hood, right? As he watches the hobbits, he has a very intense interest in the hobbits. That also, by the way, seems to suggest the way that the men and the hobbits in the common room are kind of keeping to themselves, right? The fact that one of the men in the room is watching them and listening intently is noteworthy, right? Most of them are not. Yeah. Yeah, now Blue Wizard is asking a very sensible question. If the regulars already know who he is, what purpose does the secretiveness serve? My answer to that would be to make sure that the spies of Saruman and or the servants of the Black Riders, who he believes have, suborned some of the Bree-town locals to be their spies for them, don't know that he's in town, right? It's not that he's trying to remain incognito, like that nobody in the common room will know who he is. But it does seem like he's kind of hoping not to be noticed by everybody, like that they maybe won't even notice that Strider is there, or won't recognize that won't know who he is. Again, not because they've never seen him before, but because he doesn't want them to know that he is currently present. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Man of Rohan, yes, you were saying that before. Exactly. Remember what he is gonna be saying in the next chapter about how the enemy has set traps for him before, right? I mean, he clearly is suspicious. He will say as much. He's suspicious of some of these Southerners himself. He thinks that some of them are spies, and he's right? Yeah, good. Matt points out that the cloak also obscures the sword, which is important, right? So that he doesn't, because going armed in Bree-town would be unusual. So yeah, I agree that that's also an important thing. He is wearing a sword, which of course nobody knows is broken, but still, he has a sword belted on, so people would make understandable and alarming assumptions if he was if he was openly wearing a sword in the common room of the Prancing Pony. So he's a well-traveled man with good clothes, but very worn. He has a curious pipe and intense eyes gleaming under his hood as he is staring at the hobbits. And yes, Tony, you're right that Frodo notices him, right? He stands out. Now, one of the main reasons that he stands out is that he's staring at them, right? Frodo's very conscious of this. Especially, remember, he's been warned, right? Although he's not done a great job of steering clear of spies or keeping a low profile so far, Gandalf did caution him about, how there will be, the enemy has many spies and many ways of knowing. Exactly. And yes, Blue Wizard, I certainly agree. Peter Jackson's evocation of this scene was very effective. I thought I really liked how that was done. Who's that? Frodo asked when he got a chance to whisper to Mr. Butterbur. I don't think you introduced him, right? Which is an interesting point in itself, right? Butterbur didn't introduce him. They were introduced to the whole company, right? But Butterbur didn't include Strider, which Frodo notices, right? Why didn't he? I'm not sure why. Is it because Butterbur doesn't trust Strider and so kind of didn't want to draw attention to him, right? So he just kind of, ignored him, pretended that he wasn't there. Doug is asking about how does Butterbur hear a whisper? I think this is a crowded common room whisper. He's not shouting, but I doubt he's whispering in a very, very soft voice because it probably is a loud room. It is possible, Tony, that Strider came in after the introduction and wasn't noticed coming in. That does seem to me very possible. Yeah. And Erocab, that's a really good point. As Marianne says, he has contempt for rangers. That's very clear. And Erocab says a ranger might not be considered part of the company, right? And so he's not introduced. Presumably, I don't think that Butterbur would necessarily introduce the hobbits to everybody in the room. Like, I don't think that Butterbur is like playing a sort of a corporate retreat icebreaker game, right, where he's going around the whole room having everybody introduce themselves. So I doubt that he has introduced the squint-eyed southerner either, for instance, right? He's introduced the company, right? Which means, he's introducing all the Breetown regulars to them, and especially the hobbits, presumably. But he's not going to introduce every random person that he has never seen before. And Strider would count in then not a member of the company. That seems to me to even though he knows him, right? But he's not one of the company, right? He's not local. Yeah. Exactly, Tony. Strider is neither Norm nor Cliff, right? That's who you get introduced to when you come into Cheers, not like somebody who's just kind of wandered in, and especially of whom Butterbur does not approve. Remember, Butterbur is not in league with Strider. Butterbur is actively distrustful of Strider. Yeah. Okay. Let's keep going. Him? Said the landlord in an answering whisper, cocking an eye without turning his head. I don't rightly know. He is one of the wandering folk. Rangers, we call them. He seldom talks, not but what he can tell a rare tale when he has the mind. He disappears for a month or a year and then pops up again. He was in and out pretty often last spring, but I haven't seen him about lately. What his right name is I've never heard, but he's known round here as Strider. Goes about at a great pace on his long shanks, though he don't tell nobody what cause he has to hurry. But there's no accounting for east and west, as we say in Bree, meaning the rangers and the shire folk, begging your pardon. Funny you should ask about him. But at that moment Mr. Butterbur was called away by a demand for more ale, and his last remark remained unexplained. Okay. So, what do we learn from Butterbur's response, right? He is a frequent visitor to Bree, but not exactly a regular visitor to Bree, right? He disappears for a month or a year, right? And then pops up again. I really like, right? It suggests that he's not entirely welcome, right? He sort of, pops up again like a bad penny. I don't think that I don't get the sense that Butterbur looks forward to him coming back. It seems that he more dreads his return. He seldom talks, not but what he can tell a rare tale when he has the mind, sounds like a grudging admission, slightly, on his part, right? That he's like, well, all right, well, I will give him credit. He can tell a rare tale when he has a mind, right? But he doesn't, but there's almost like an implicit, but he doesn't usually have a mind, right? He doesn't, there's nothing, again, I don't see any affection for him here. And Brandon, it is interesting that the Bree-landers view the hobbits and the rangers as proverbially outlandish, right? There's no accounting for east and west, right? Those hobbits of the Shire are strange, and the rangers of the east are strange, right? Lady Schmebiok, exactly. He tells good stories, occasionally, remember, not always. He's not known as a storyteller. People don't look forward to him coming hoping he's going to tell another story. Again, Butterbur does justice to him, right? There have been a couple occasions on which he's told stories, and they've been rare tales. They've been unusual stories, right? When he has talked. But he doesn't usually talk. He usually keeps to himself. Good, Lincoln, that's a really great contrast. His relationship to Bree is not like Gandalf's relationship to the Shire. Now remember, of course, Gandalf's relationship to the Shire is not universally positive, at least not in the opinion of all the inhabitants of the Shire, right? He is distrusted by many in the Shire. However, excuse me, among those he knows and who know him, he is, his people look forward to him coming, right? And he has this history of coming in and doing the fireworks displays, right? It does not seem to be that same kind of association from Butterbur, certainly. Yeah. And yeah, Milthalio, I agree. The fact that he seldom talks is probably something that leads Butterbur to distrust him, right? Like, who is this guy? What is he up to? Why does he keep coming back? Where does he... goes about at a great pace on his long shanks, though he don't tell nobody what cause he has to hurry, right? He's up to something, that guy. He's up to something. But we don't know what it is, right? He's always going about at a great pace, right? He always seems to be in a hurry, and he's not a trader. He doesn't just seem to be a traveler. And then he comes in, and then he doesn't say anything, and then he leaves again. Like, what's up with that guy? Yeah. It's interesting. Arokheb says it's funny that Butterbur, who's always himself hurrying, harps on Strider's hurrying about. But see, Butterbur's hurrying first of all, Butterbur's hurry is very local, right? It's all generally within the confines of the building, right? But more, there's a purpose for it, right? There's nothing inexplicable about Butterbur being in a hurry, right? What he's got a job and he's doing his job, right? What's Strider's job? What's he up to? Again, it's not nothing, right? He's not just loitering, which would be possibly objectionable for other reasons. So yeah. And Tony, I have no idea why Strider does not usually go on horseback. Why is he usually on foot? One can guess. I mean, if I had to guess, I would say that if I had to guess, I would say it's because he's often going to places where it's hard to take horses. But we don't really know. Good. Harnuth says, Strider strides, Butterbur bustles. Yeah, there's a difference between going about at a great pace and just bustling about at a great pace. Good. Bricktails and a couple other were yeah, so, sorry, Bricktails and a couple other were talking about the last spring reference, right? That he was in and out pretty often last spring, but I haven't seen him about lately. What was going on last spring? What was going on last spring? Right? Remember, it's autumn, right? It's very early October right now when the story is happening. So last spring was when Gandalf was in the area, right? So I think, the hunt for Gollum would have taken him well away from Bree, right? He would have been gone for a while during the hunt for Gollum. He was working with Gandalf and seems to have been in the area. Probably he and Gandalf came back at around the same time. So when Gandalf shows up and is talking to Frodo and having their long conversation and they're remember, they're looking towards the summertime. remember the letter that Gandalf leaves for Frodo says that he should leave the Shire before the end of July, right? So it's spring. It's it's in the spring when Gandalf is in the area and talking to Frodo, and they're having their initial discussion there. Yeah, the shadow of the past happens in the spring. So he was there, as he's going to say later on. He's just missed Gandalf when Gandalf came by and ended up leaving the letter for Butterbur. So he sort of stepped out for a while. He went about at a great pace on his Longshanks to somewhere else for a little while because he thought that Gandalf had it taken care of, right? And they missed each other. So anyway, yeah, there's that, I think, is the explanation for why he was busy guarding the frontiers of the Shire at that point, back in the spring. Okay, Croker is asking, hasn't Strider just learned some of his rangers were killed guarding the South Farthing? Probably, yeah. I mean, he does know of the movements of the Black Riders. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to figure out what exactly we know about this, but I mean, he is certainly aware of that. Yeah. Tillian, that is a really interesting point. Tillian says that Butterbur doesn't trust Strider, but he seems to like Gandalf. Butterbur does, clearly. Butterbur trusts Gandalf, and that's really the interesting contrast. Lincoln, you were talking about Gandalf's presence in the Shire, but you're right, but the real contrast, right, is Gandalf's presence at the Prancing Pony, right? Gandalf and Strider make the clear contrast between how they are received by Butterbur. Butterbur says that he's a good friend, that he considers Gandalf a good friend of his. But Strider, he distrusts entirely. That, I suspect, Strider's fine with that. Strider wants to keep a low profile. I think that he does not want to be known. I think he's fine being distrusted by Butterbur. He would rather be distrusted and little known. But remember, he doesn't even tell anybody his name, right? And that's kind of a strange, what his right name is, I've never heard, Butterbur says, right? It's not that Aragorn has introduced himself as Strider, right? Like, he doesn't come in and say, hi, call me Strider. He just hasn't introduced himself at all. He hasn't told anybody what his name is. And so they call him Strider. That's the nickname they have given him. And he's fine with it. He's like, fine, call me Strider, right? So, yeah, anyway, so he seems to be setting out to keep a very low profile to keep a very low profile on the in Bree, right? Whereas Gandalf is very open about who he is and comes and hangs out and is friends with Butterbur, and it's fine, right? Gandalf has no desire to hide himself. Aragorn wants to be inconspicuous. All right. Frodo found that Strider was now looking at him, as if he had heard or guessed all that had been said. Presently, with a wave of his hand and a nod, he invited Frodo to come over and sit by him. As Frodo drew near, he threw back his hood, showing a shaggy head of dark hair flecked with grey, and in a pale, stern face, a pair of keen grey eyes. "I am called Strider," he said in a low voice. "I am very pleased to meet you, Master Underhill, if old Butterbur got your name right." "He did," said Frodo stiffly. He felt far from comfortable under the stare of those keen eyes. "Well, Master Underhill," said Strider, "if I were you, I should stop your young friends from talking too much. Drink, fire, and chance meeting are pleasant enough, but, well, this isn't the Shire. There are queer folk about. Though I say it as shouldn't, you may think," he added with a wry smile, seeing Frodo's glance. "And there have been even stranger travellers through Bree lately," he went on, watching Frodo's face. Okay. Yeah, Valoria, I really like I really like the fact that his very indirect introduction of himself, right? He doesn't say his name is Strider, right? He says, I am called Strider, right? Which is very true, right? They do call him Strider here, but he's playing his cards close to the vest and introducing himself that way, right? And yeah, Alexander, it is interesting that Strider doesn't seem to believe. Now notice that he is showing some skepticism of Frodo, but he's also signaling to him, right? He's signaling to Frodo, I know more than you're telling, right? He's very indirectly saying, I know that's not your real name, right? But he's also not committing himself to how much he actually does know, right? So, you know, it's really interesting how this can kind of work both ways, right? Yeah, it would sound totally natural if anyone overheard JJ. You're absolutely right. But also, like, so if Frodo is a spy, right? If Frodo is an enemy agent setting a trap for Aragorn, which is one of the things he's going to explain that he's, you know, concerned about, Aragorn is not committing himself to anything, right? But if Frodo is legitimate, then he's also signaling to him, I have some inside information, right? And I'm seeing through your devilishly clever deception that you are successfully perpetrating on the entire rest of the population of Bree. Yeah. Lincoln says, has Sauron ever tried sending hobbits after Aragorn? Probably not, Lincoln, but this could be the first time, right? Especially since it's known that there's a party of hobbits that he's looking for, right? Maybe there's a decoy out there, right? Could happen. He's got to make sure. Yeah. Yeah, not saying it's likely, but, you know, it could happen. Yeah, Tamara's wondering about the gray in Aragorn's hair. Yeah, so, I mean, that's an interesting detail, right? Showing a shaggy head of dark hair flecked with gray, right? So he is, of course, much older than he looks, but he doesn't look young. Right? I mean, he doesn't look like he's in his 20s. He looks like he's in his 40s, maybe, right? I mean, my hair, you can't see too much of my hair anymore. My hair is much more than flecked with gray. I got a lot of gray on both sides, and my beard is fairly decisively gray. I'm only 43, so... Am I 43? Yeah, I'm 43. So, you know, like, he looks late 30s, early 40s is what he looks, but he's well over than that. Yeah, I'm forgetting. He's at least 80, 85, somewhere between 80 and 90. Yeah, 87. There we go. Yeah. So he's obviously way older than he actually looks, but again, he doesn't look young. So experienced, been around, right? He's been around a lot. That's one of the things, again, which you could read from his clothes as well. Yeah. Gallandar says, yeah, I wonder if Frodo manages a poker face in response to Strider's mention of strange visitors to Bree. If he gives anything away, Strider doesn't react. Yeah, no, we can't really tell. Though it's hard to imagine that the stiffness of Frodo's response, his apparent discomfort, right? I doubt any of this would be hard for him to interpret. And Erocheb, you're right. We will learn later that he also is faking a Bree accent through this conversation, right? Which is kind of cool and kind of interesting and really makes me want to know exactly what a Bree accent is like. But anyway, again, notice all of the emphasis on his eyes, right? We had the gleam of his eyes even from under his hood, and now the keenness of his eyes, the adjective keen applied to his eyes twice, in 3 paragraphs here, right? And this is the eyes are always, there's a very strong correlation in Tolkien's description with somebody's eyes and the sort of strength of their will as well. Even Gollum, whose eyes glow in the dark such that you can see the tunnel in front of him from behind his head, right, as his eyes glowing are shining out on them. It is like his in even that is sort of a reflection of his searching will as well. Remember how the gleam in his eyes changes its quality, as we'll see later on, depending on what aspect of his will is sort of dominant at the time. Yeah. And I agree, Mad Violinist, keen is generally a positive adjective. Yeah, generally. I agree. Matt is suggesting they would have a Welsh accent. I like that. I hope they do. I really like Welsh accents, actually. I want to imagine Butterbur speaking in a Welsh accent. That's totally how I want to imagine it. Good call. I'm gonna orally picture that from now on. Okay. Yeah, Auroran is suggesting that the grayness combined with the keenness of his eyes would seem to connect him with elves. Possibly, yeah, that there's sort of an elvish air to him. That seems to me quite likely. Anyway. Notice also his comments at the end, right? If I were you, I should stop your young friends from talking too much. Drink, fire, and chance meeting are pleasant enough, but, well, this isn't the Shire. There are queer folk about, though I say it as shouldn't, you may think. He added with a wry smile, seeing Frodo's glance, right? Again, he's Frodo not really concealing his thoughts very well from Strider. That's pretty clear, right? And there have been even stranger travelers through Bree lately, he went on, watching Frodo's face. Do you know who I'm talking about? The Black Riders here. Do you know what I'm talking about, right? Are you tracking with me here? I love his sort of, Doug, it's a really good way to describe it. His subtle sense of humor, right? His quickness to laugh at himself here, right? Though I say it as shouldn't, you may think, right? I like his acknowledgement that, like, I probably look, stranger than any of the queer folk that I'm warning you of, right? And why should I, who's pretty strange even on the stranger spectrum, be the one cautioning you to beware of talking to strangers, right? So I like that. His sort of, awareness of the situation there, I think is really good. And the way and the sort of the masterful segue, right? And there have been even stranger travelers through Bree lately. And Mike really likes the chance meeting. Yes. The hyphenated chance meeting, right, Mike, as you were pointing to, that's a thing, right? A chance meeting is a thing. And it's a pleasant thing, apparently, Mike, right? So there we are. Good. Frodo returned his gaze, but said nothing, and Strider made no further sign. This is interesting, right? Frodo does not seem to know how to respond to this. I think he is picking up, or maybe picking up, on what Strider is implying, but he's not sure, like, should I acknowledge that I understand what he's talking about? Like, who is this guy and how much does he know? He seems to know that I'm traveling under an assumed name. He seems to be making a reference to the Black Riders. Does that mean he is a spy in their pay and he's, like, trying to rumble me? Or what? Like, there's a lot of uncertainty here, right? And he just doesn't say anything, right? He returns his gaze but says nothing. He has no idea what to say. Frodo, not, James Bond, he is not, right? Clearly. His attention seems suddenly to be fixed on Pippin. This is Strider's attention, right? His attention seemed suddenly to be fixed on Pippin. To his alarm, Frodo became aware that the ridiculous young Took, encouraged by his success with the fat mayor of Mickle Delving, was now actually giving a comic account of Bilbo's farewell party. He was already giving an imitation of the speech, and was drawing near to the astonishing disappearance. Frodo was annoyed. It was a harmless enough tale for most of the local hobbits, no doubt, just a funny story about those funny people away beyond the river, but some, old Butterbur for instance, knew a thing or two, and had probably heard rumors long ago about Bilbo's vanishing. It would bring the name of Baggins to their minds, especially if there had been inquiries in Bree after that name. Frodo fidgeted, wondering what to do. Pippin was evidently much enjoying the attention he was getting, and had become quite forgetful of their danger. Frodo had a sudden fear that in his present mood he might even mention the ring, and that might well prove disastrous. Yeah. Blue Wizard likes the capital D in disappearance, an imitation of the speech, and was drawing nearer to the astonishing disappearance, right? Those are the major... the major features of this story, right? The speech and the disappearance. And you do get the sense this is a story, right? A story told many times, a story that's a familiar one in the Shire, right? And these are its primary features, right? The speech and the disappearance. Tony was interested in that one too. Pippin, getting completely carried away, has become completely forgetful of their danger. And Frodo is annoyed, right? He's annoyed because there's somebody who's even worse at being undercover than he is, right? And he's annoyed because he doesn't know what to do. Pippin has put him in a terrible situation because he's doing something very stupid, right? He's drawing people's attention to the name of Baggins, and as Frodo has thought out, right? If somebody's been inquiring about Baggins in the town, it's gonna bring it up in people's minds, right? So that's obviously a really dumb thing to do. But what's he supposed to do, right? If he says shut up to Pippin, if he, it comes over to Pippin and is like, Pippin, I think we need some hush right now, right? That's just going to draw further attention to it. If he just comes in and drags Pippin away, it's going to look really strange, and people are going to be telling all these, more and more stories. I agree. Yes, Zach, it seems to me very likely that Pippin is a little tipsy, right? I don't think that Pippin is sloppy drunk at this point, but Pippin's had a few, and is clearly experiencing some elevated spirits, has lost some of his inhibitions, some of which inhibitions it would have been better and safer for him to have kept in touch with, right, during this conversation. So yeah, I do... I do think that the beer has played a role, certainly in this story. But Frodo has no idea how to handle this tactfully, right? Again, master of espionage, he is not. And Mad Violinist, yeah, I agree. He's decompressing after 4 terrible or very strange days. Yeah. And this is, and this, here he is hanging out with other hobbits in the common room of an inn. This is a familiar setting, right? Not totally familiar. Bree's still kind of weird, but still, this is comfortable. This is nice. And he's relaxing. What's wrong with that? Right? You had better do something quick, Strider whispered Strider in his ear. Frodo jumped up and stood on a table and began to talk. The attention of Pippin's audience was disturbed. Some of the hobbits looked at Frodo and laughed and clapped, thinking that Mr. Underhill had taken as much ale as was good for him. Frodo suddenly felt very foolish, and found himself, as was his habit when making a speech, fingering the things in his pocket. He felt the ring on its chain, and quite unaccountably, the desire came over him to slip it on and vanish out of the silly situation. It seemed to him somehow as if the suggestion came to him from outside, from someone or something in the room. He resisted the temptation firmly, and clasped the ring in his hand, as if to keep hold on it and prevent it from escaping or doing any mischief. At any rate, it gave him no inspiration. He spoke a few suitable words, as they would have said in the Shire. We are all very much gratified by the kindness of your reception, and I venture to hope that my brief visit will help to renew the old ties of friendship between the Shire and Bree. And then he hesitated and coughed. Okay. Excellent. So, as you guys are, of course, have all been looking forward to, this is another one of those moments where we are clearly seeing the ring acting directly. Now, there's a yeah, right, Mike is like, there goes the rest of the class. Yeah, probably. But anyway, okay. What do we see here, right? Does this impulse come from the ring? I say yes, definitely. But there are 2 interesting differences here between the temptation that Frodo is experiencing here and the temptation that he has experienced before. Difference number 1, he resists it, right? Remember, the barrow was the first time he ever resisted it. We were noticing, he was resistant before, but he gave in multiple times earlier on. His record in resisting these ring temptations has not been great so far. So it's interesting, first of all, that he does seem to resist it. And Mad Violinist, that's exactly how I interpret that. So the really interesting thing, the different thing here than we've seen anywhere else, there have been other times when he is clearly experiencing a temptation which comes from the ring. And we've come to recognize those tags, right? And the pattern, this is exactly the kind of thing the ring has always been tempting him to do, right? The number one thing is put on the ring and escape, right? Put on the ring and run away. Separate yourself from your friends. Look out for number 1, right? Put on the ring in order to save yourself or gain yourself something. That's what the ring does, right? So that seems clear. But the major difference is that he's aware of it as an outside thing. We've seen him struggle with temptation with the ring before. We have never seen him aware of the fact that he was resisting a temptation by something outside himself before, right? That little voice that said, hey, put on the ring. Check and make sure that this ring that Tom Bombadil just made disappear and reappear is really your true ring, right? Why don't you put on the ring and save yourself, and you can weep for Merry and Sam and Pippin later on, right? And it'll be awful. You'll be very, very sad that they died, but at least you will be safe. All of those things, he was never aware that it was anything but his own idea that he was thinking and rejecting, right? It's very interesting to me that he is aware of it. Is it coming from somewhere outside in the room? Is there somebody present in the room who is projecting this thought to him? No, I don't think so. I think this is the ring. Still, just like before, but the difference is that he is conscious of it. He is aware for the first time of the fact that he is experiencing a temptation from a source which is not internal to him, in fact, from someone or something in the room. Yeah, the ring, which is in the room. It's in his pocket, right? It's close to his person, but it's outside his brain, right? It is from something in the room, namely the ring in his pocket. And yes, Amathorn, you're absolutely right. He is thinking about the ring at that time, right? He feels the ring on its chain, and as soon as he touches the ring, right? As soon as his finger touches the ring, quite unaccountably, the desire came over him to slip it on, right? So he seems to even associate it with the ring itself, right? As soon as he touches the ring, this strong external impulse to put on the ring and escape comes over him, right? And again, so for the first time, he seems to know. Erokeb is suggesting that perhaps his successful resistance of the ring's temptation in the barrow has made him more perceptive. Maybe. So anyway, so I'm 100% convinced that this is the ring. Apart from the fact that there's nobody in the room who has the power to do this. I mean, I don't think the squint-eyed southerner has the ability to project that thought into Frodo's mind. Strider might have the power to do it, but he's certainly not the one doing it. So yeah, Mad Violinist suggests that he's growing, right? Yeah, I do. But watch what happens. Watch what happens after that, right? So he succeeded, right? The ring has attempted to make him put it on and escape and vanish in front of everybody, and it's failed, right? He's resisted. But look what happens immediately afterwards. It seemed to him somehow as if the suggestion came from outside, from someone or something in the room. He resisted the temptation firmly and clasped the ring in his hand as if to keep a hold on it and prevent it from escaping or doing any mischief. Right? I think the ring still got him. Right? Why did he do that? Why is he putting his hand... Why is he squeezing the ring in his hand when he's talking? Right? Now, you could say that he's suspicious of it. Right? He thinks that this suggestion is coming from the ring. He recognizes it as a temptation, right? That word is used here, which has never been used before in this situation. So he's fighting back against the ring, right? By holding it to prevent it from escaping. Of course, that's how the ring is ultimately... The ring is going to end up on his finger because he's doing that, because he's holding it in his hand. If he weren't holding it in his hand, he wouldn't have had that... It wouldn't have revealed itself, right? I think that the ring was one too many for him. Or rather, he resisted, but he only partially resisted. He thinks he's resisting, but he's not totally resisting, right? He doesn't put it on, but he does hold it and squeeze it, right? To look after it, because but that has the flavor of the same rationalization that we've seen the ring induce before, right? Yeah, I think that this is him semi-giving in. This is him temporizing with the temptation, not just rejecting it. If he were rejecting it, he would take his finger off the ring and not, make sure that nothing could happen, right? Make sure the ring doesn't do any mischief. It's much more likely to do mischief if it's in his hand or to get dropped or something. It's safer in his pocket. Safer in his pocket with his hand out of his pocket, right? If he's really thinking clearly himself about how to keep the ring safe and how to minimize the possibility of any mischief of any kind occurring, it would be to keep his hand out of his pocket and not do anything, right? But I think this is him succeeding in resisting one temptation, but falling for the other, right? Or rather, perhaps I would put this a different way. I think it shows the state of his heart to some extent. Mad Violinist was saying that this would suggest a cunning that points towards sentience in the ring. I I don't think so. I think perhaps I was incautious in saying that. It's easy to characterize this as a super devious plan by the ring, right? That the ring is really doing something like the door in the face technique, right? Where it gives one temptation which Frodo resists, which then makes it easier for him to fall to the much more subtle and much more minor temptation, right, of holding on to it. But I don't think it's strategy necessarily by the ring. But I think what it shows is, again, it shows the state of Frodo's heart, right? He is attached to the ring. And the rationalization comes from him, right? Oh, I must make sure, like, it doesn't get away. Like, seriously? Is it going to get away? Now, it can happen, right? It happened with Gollum. But again, still, holding it in his hand, not the way to minimize any chance of anything going wrong, right? And that no real thinking through of the issue could, I think, really come to that conclusion, right? So why is he holding it? He's telling himself that he's clasping the ring in his hand to prevent it from escaping or doing any mischief. But that's a rationalization. Why is he holding it in his hand? Because he wants it in his hand, right? At any rate, it gave him no inspiration. Was he seeking inspiration from the ring? So he's not going to put it on, because that would be stupid, right? He's totally going to resist the temptation just to disappear in front of everybody and escape out of the silly situation. Not going to do that. But he is going to cling to the ring, right? He is going to hold on to it and tell himself that he's doing this in order to keep it from escaping, right? But I don't think that's the real reason. I think that's a rationalization, right? I think, I think he is seeking inspiration from it. You know, at any rate, it gave him no inspiration. Yeah. Yeah, good. Aruron says, I love how this is such an apt parallel to Bilbo's speech. Although Bilbo doesn't sing a song before he disappears, and although Bilbo intended to use the ring, not knowing what it was, whereas Frodo knows what it is and it falls on him by accident. Yeah, the parallel, right? And it is really funny, right? Pippin is telling the story of Bilbo's disappearance, right? His speech and disappearance. So Frodo is going to distract attention away by enacting Bilbo's story, right? By making a speech and then doing an astonishing disappearance. The irony of that is kind of wonderful, actually. Yeah. Yeah. No, Bricktails, I agree. The idea of him keeping the ring from escaping, again, that too, notice what a cunning rationalization that is, right? On the one hand, sure, he's got to keep the ring safe, right? He can't let the ring get away, but at the same time, he's clinging to it, right? He also wants to hold it tight and to have it in his hand at this moment when he's nervous and feels like he needs help, right? Again, I'm not saying he's seeking inspiration from it consciously, being like, okay, ring, tell me what to say, right? He's not saying that to himself, right? But it suggests that the reference to the inspiration seems to me to suggest that there's at least this sort of subconscious sense in which, by clinging to the ring, he is he's showing his attachment to it, but even in a sense his like unconscious reliance on it. Yeah. So this is a really interesting and complicated moment. Temptation from the ring, which Frodo succeeds, sort of, half succeeds, partially succeeds in resisting. Yeah. One more. Everyone in the room was now looking at him. "A song!" shouted one of the hobbits. "A song! A song!" shouted all the others. "Come on now, master, sing us something that we haven't heard before." For a moment Frodo stood gaping. Then, in desperation, he began a ridiculous song that Bilbo had been rather fond of, and indeed rather proud of, for he had made up the words himself. It was about an inn, and that is probably why it came into Frodo's mind just then. Here it is in full. Only a few words of it are now, as a rule, remembered. Okay. So... No, we're not going to have time for the song tonight. The song is the rest of the song. I did put the song on slides for tonight. But we're not gonna. It's too late to start the song. We have five slides of poetry, right? We're not gonna get to all that tonight. The call for a song, on the one hand, it's a really friendly thing, and kind of tells you something about the company, right? About the regulars, that singing songs, and this is a thing that they do, right? However, it also seems to suggest, I take this as a follow-up to the previous comment about them thinking that Mr. Underhill had as much ale as was good for him, right? They think he's drunk, which is why he's jumped up on the table and is making speeches now, right? So they want to capitalize on the situation by inviting him to sing, right? Because he certainly has weak enough inhibitions now that he'll do that, right? And this might be really funny to have Mr. Underhill, so... They want to hear a song that they haven't heard before, right? And this could just be totally wholesome, right? But I do think they're kind of inviting him to make a fool of himself because they think it's hilarious, right? And that seems to be part of the spirit of the thing, right? Yeah. Good. And Eric Heb, I agree. Only a few words of it are now, as a rule, remembered. Is absolutely wonderful. For a little teaser, the title of my first poetry slide here is A Nursery Rhyme Undone and Its Scandalous Secret Unlocked. That is the subtitle of the original version of this poem. So the song that Frodo sings here, The Cat and the Fiddle, as is almost all of the poetry in The Lord of the Rings. Not all, quite, but especially in the Fellowship of the Ring, almost every song in the Fellowship of the Ring is a poem that Tolkien had written years and years before. He had published much of it years and years before. And this is one of those. In 1923, in the Yorkshire something or other, Yorkshire, not poems, the Yorkshire Magazine, something like that. I'm forgetting the title. He published this poem, 1923, and the title of it was The Cat and the Fiddle, or A Nursery Rhyme Undone and Its Scandalous Secret Unlocked, right? This is the true story behind The Cat and the Fiddle. So, hey diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle, the cow jumped over the moon. The little dog laughed to see such sport, and the Saturday, and the dish ran away with the spoon. The original nursery rhyme that's very familiar just looks like a stream of kind of nonsense images, right? I mean, sort of suggesting a kind of riotous good time in which wildly unlikely things are occurring, but it doesn't give any of the story, right? It just sounds like nonsense, right? But what is the scandalous secret behind the nursery rhyme, right? Let's undo the nursery rhyme and reveal and unlock the scandalous secret of the nursery rhyme, and so tell the expanded story. And I love how it builds up to. I love how it builds up to, sort of the familiar scene and the familiar lines, where we finally come around to the nursery rhyme. Yeah, very good. But yeah, Sharon's yelling at me. I will now back slowly away from the poem. I'm not going to talk about it now. So this is, Sharon, this is me not talking about the poem. This is me contextualizing the poem and therefore kind of temporizing with my own temptation to talk about the poem. See, I'm resisting. But like Frodo, I'm resisting, and yet I'm kind of falling to the temptation at the same time. So there you go. Anyway, it's all good fun. One last piece of good fun. This is not the song that Frodo originally sang. Frodo was going to get up on the table and end up singing a song was part of the original concept of this chapter when Tolkien first got there. But this isn't the song that he sang in the very first draft. In the first draft, exactly Bricktales, it was the troll song, Sam's troll song. Troll sat alone on a seat of stone and munched and mumbled a bare old bone. And this is understandable on the one hand because the troll song is a drinking song. It's explicitly patterned on a pub song. So it's exactly the kind of song that, the lines, heal it, peel it, like that, like the crowd's supposed to join in and sing along with that and with the repeated lines. So it's supposed to be a kind of call and response, uproarious pub song kind of situation. So by the way, so in the original version, when he sings the song the second time, Frodo ends up falling and accidentally putting the ring on when he gets to the kicking the troll in the seat, right? He's reenacting the kick to the seat of the troll, does that too vigorously, and that's how he slips and falls and puts on the ring in the original draft. But it wasn't actually very long. It was only one draft that it was the troll song, and then he shifted it. He cut the troll song temporarily, and inserted this one instead. But both of those songs he had written earlier on in the early 20s, the troll song and the Cat and the Fiddle. So it was just a question for him of like which of these really fun pre-existing poems of his was he going to use. Okay. Yeah, so, but no, Tony, this is me resisting, right? I'm totally not talking about the song tonight. Absolutely not talking about the song. Okay, so that's it. Because this is me not talking about the song. So we'll talk about the song next time, which sadly will not be for a fortnight. So I will see you guys back in a fortnight. It'll be, the beginning of March, right? It'll be like March 3rd or something like that. Or 5th, or I don't even know what it's going to be. But anyway, first Tuesday of March, I'll be back. And we'll talk about the song, and maybe we'll even get past the song. Who knows? Okay. So 6th? Yeah. Whichever is the Tuesday. I don't know. I'm on a need-to-know basis. I've got next week, and then I'll sort it out after I get back. Thanks, everybody. So I was going to say goodbye to the Twitter audience, and it's field trip time. Excellent. Rinru's great. I was hoping that we were going to get some music for the song. Great. So please do post for me a recording. I'll play it next time. That'd be really cool. So okay, 6th. A fortnight from tonight, we'll be back for another class. We're going to do our field trip now. Thanks, everybody on Twitter, for joining us. Switch over to twitch.tv/SignumU if you want to stay with us. Thanks to you guys. And there we go. All right. All right. Now we're going to field trip.
Good evening.
Because we're not talking about poetry because I'm done. All right. Okay. All right, so you're here. We've got the Christmas Bjorning, right?
Yep, this is Valori here. I'm on Got Yule tonight. Hi, everybody.
All right. Okay, so let's we're going to travel really far compared to where we've been lately. Tonight we're going to go all the way to Stadl. So That'll be an adventure. So let's head out. We don't even have to mount up for this necessarily.
Nope, we can do that on foot. Oh man, that thing about Bob just about blew my mind.
I know, right? I mean, I've barely recovered.
I was thinking about my model set too, because it only came with one hobbit worker for the Prancing Pony, but Bob was portrayed as a 13-year-old boy chasing a dog that had gotten into the kitchens.
Huh. I suppose Bob could be
I'd never thought about it till now, but I just suddenly realized it only came with one hobbit and a young boy.
Oh man. Yeah, no, I like, Bob's still a hobbit as far as I'm concerned.
Headcanon still accepted, but I do think that's
absolutely
funny. That was what Mithril Miniatures interpreted it as back in the day before it was bought out by Warhammer.
That is interesting. Okay, let's kind of wait up in the street here so we can head out together.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, see, JJ says he's never even considered the possibility that Bob could be a hobbit. That's so strange to me. Like, how could anyone not picture Bob as a hobbit? It's so obvious.
It's like the whole thing about Legolas having blonde hair or black hair. It's never stated, so everyone's left to their own imagination, I suppose.
Right. That one, of course, has been obviously significantly influenced by the film, especially nowadays when so many people, the percentage of Tolkien fans who take Peter Jackson like completely for granted, has only grown over the years, as I was strongly reminded lately, when the Amazon thing came out, and hearing from the number of people like that were following me on Twitter who were not around or not old enough, for that period of anticipation before the Peter Jackson films came out, So yeah, to so many Tolkien fans in today's world, there's they don't remember a time before those films existed, and
before
so
Gimli had red hair.
Before Gimli had red hair, and yes, exactly, before
all that
kind of thing. But anyway, this is a fascinating like the Bob question is now like that's going to be, I think, like a sort of a paradigm for me. All right, let's head out. Let's head over to Staddle.
The Bob effect.
Yeah, because it's a of as far as like questions in that category, right, where the text doesn't say explicitly, and that people can have such a, it's obviously just as weird to many others that Bob could be a hobbit as it is to me that he could be a man, right? And so, just interesting that this text has, led us to such very different
interpretations.
Yeah, conclusions. I mean, it's very
We'll have to see where else it pops up, won't we?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be interested to see if there are other examples of that. Of course, I might miss them because it might not even occur to me, as it would never have occurred to me to even question this. Okay. Yeah. Just amazing. Yeah. Milthalia says she always assumed that Bob was Nob's brother. Now, let's see. Where should we go? Should we go up this way? Is this the way to go to the Staddle Gate?
I don't know if this way's an exit.
Hey, where is this? This is an alley. Have I ever been here?
This is new. No, we went past the Staddle Gate. It was back up by the crafting hall.
Oh, was it? Was that the way?
I think so.
Hang on. Sorry.
Or was that the way to
I'm just finding myself in a part of Bree I've never been in. I never even came up this alley before. Is there anything up here?
Me neither. This used to be the place where you had the box of nails and then you kind of ignored the rest.
Wow.
Yeah.
Look at this. This is cool.
Oh, it connects.
Oh, wait,
it connects. Here it is.
So this is the way to Staddle. Look at that. Okay. Oh. Hey, that's a cunning little alley passageway.
It is amazing that after I've been playing the game this long, I'm still finding that there's all these places I've never seen before and don't know where they go.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the Staddle Gate.
Yep.
So we've got people training here.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. Is this like a little guardhouse by the gate?
Oh, it's one of them.
I guess. You just can't be too careful, I guess, with those, hobbits from Staddle. They might decide to mass up and attack at any point.
It's bands of roaming midges.
Yeah. Okay, we've got a little Arnorian wall up here. Right,
Picnickers.
Yeah, picnickers on the other. Okay, now we have immediately hobbit holes around the side. So notice how Staddle is not... It's not separate. I mean, it's separate. We're outside the gates, right? But we're starting to get hobbit holes immediately outside the gates. So it's not sort of physically or kind of geographically removed, right? As JJ was pointing out, they're just along the lane up to the gates, right? So it's as if they're part of the same thing. And this is right. Oh, and here we are in the very middle of Staddle.
Hey, a wooden gazebo for a change.
Yeah, a wooden gazebo with nothing else on it. And that's the Staddle banner? Or is the Breetown banner? Is that just
looks like no, Breetown had the boar on it.
Right, that's right. Breetown. So this is the separate flag of Staddle. Right? Hill?
Yeah.
Trees.
3 trees.
3 trees. What's the wavy business under the trees?
I can't really tell.
Is there another one I can get closer to? Yes, there is.
Yes, right here.
Yeah, here we go.
Wings? Oh, that was the one I was joking. It looked like 2 green owl eyes and 2 wings sticking out, but
right. Oh, I see the owl eyes. Right there under the roots of the trees there, right?
Yep.
Huh.
It could almost be a hobbit hole they're coming out of too, but that would imply it was in disrepair.
Right. Interesting. I wonder why trees. I mean, there are trees.
I don't know what's the etymological root of Staddle. That might have some clue to it.
I don't know. I mean, Bree means hill. So it's like it's just another one of those, like the water in Lake Town and all those other things.
It says a Staddle is a platform or framework, or a mushroom-shaped stone supporting a framework or rick.
Huh. Interesting.
Based on the German word to stand.
Okay.
So supports that. I don't see how these trees are It looks like 2 trees supporting 1 tree, but they
I'm not
sort
sure.
of look like they're about to tip over.
I'm not 100% convinced that etymology is necessarily very relevant here, or not directly relevant.
It says it comes from the Old English stathel for base or support.
Yeah. No, it's not that I'm questioning that. I'm just questioning whether it's relevant to the town of Staddle.
I don't know. That's the only thing I could find on it, and there's precious little.
Yeah, I agree. So, yeah, I agree, Pontine, this definitely is a hill with layers of dirt. It's a surprisingly non-hobbitish banner.
For all the humans here, I haven't... Yeah. And for all the humans here, I haven't seen really any human dwellings, just human structures.
Right. Tony is suggesting that it means that it's at the base of the hill, Staddle is. And so that's why
it kind of is. There's also a lot of trees here. Maybe that's where some of the timber comes from.
Yeah.
Maybe they get their timber.
There are trees here, but you would think like Archet might be symbolized by trees because it's right near the Chetwood. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But Staddle is farm country. I mean, again, like there are trees, right?
Maybe this is the tree. Maybe this is the tree next to those old ruins. That big golden tree.
Maybe.
You think that's what it is? But it's not golden. Maybe it's golden now because it's diseased or something.
Right. I don't know.
But that was a pretty singular tree. It was very decorated and important.
It was rather unusual. Well, I don't know. The banner is a curiosity. I don't understand the banner in the game, but so let's look around. One thing that we notice right away that I think is very striking about Staddle, although we see 100% hobbit holes so far, we get humans all over the place, right? This is a guard, right? Constable Tanglebrush. Tangle Rush, right? I said brush.
Rush.
Rush, yes, Tangle Rush.
That's a rather foreboding name.
Yes, it is.
Getting tangled in the rushes is generally a bad and or deadly thing.
Right. And now we have other watchers with botanical names, right?
Reedy and Redweed.
But then we have hobbits up here, right? The Burr family and the Lowbanks. So we have one with a natural name of Lowbanks and another with a botanical name, Burr. So we have local hobbits. So there seems to be more mingling. It's certainly one of the things we're seeing so far is it suggests that most of the watch are men, right? The constables and like the law enforcement personnel appear to be more big folk than hobbit, at least what we're seeing here initially, right? We've got this hobbit guy Longo, right, with his dog. We see some human merchants over here, right? But then also some hobbit merchants next to them.
Up to now, the only watchers we've seen is the one in Coombe, Constable Underhill.
Right, exactly. Yeah, no. So we will see a hobbit member of law enforcement in Coombe, but we haven't in Archit, which is curious because Archit is Staddle rather is so hobbit heavy. This woman over here running the fishing supplies, also human. So we're getting a lot of human like support staff around here, right? And yet all hobbit houses. We haven't seen a single human residence anywhere in town.
Nope.
But let's continue out. So we had the whole side of the Bree Hill that was over there lined with hobbit holes. And then we had hobbit houses because, of course, where it's flat, you can't always have hobbit holes. There's another hobbit house meant to look like a hole.
Another Underhill lives there. Ponto Underhill.
Right. And here's one. Look at this. This looks almost like an artificial rise. This looks... I mean, I guess it's not actually a leach field, but it kind of looks like a leach field. Anyway, so this is, right. What's his name? Ponto?
Falco Greenhand.
Falco, right. Falco, the gardener, right?
Yeah, for the name like Greenhand, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Now, so we got hobbit farmers here. Right.
Gammy Boggs.
Good old Gammy Boggs.
I love that name. That's a great one.
And my favorite is the little hobbit farm outbuilding here. Right? Is this like what is this, a shed, or is this a separate hobbit house? Is this a little is this
the
a
mother-in-law suite?
Exactly. I was just gonna say that, a little hobbit in-law suite, detached in-law suite over here. Or
a fancy privy.
Right. Maybe it's a deluxe outhouse. I don't know. But yeah, exactly, Zach. It looks like, I guess, hobbits in Staddle have tiny houses, right? So there you go.
Oh, this is a nice big house. This one's got towers on it now. The one next door here.
This one over here, it looks like it reminds you of some of the bigger towns, like in Budgeford or even like Brandy Hall, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Staddle, therefore, I mean, so the in-game Staddle is 100% Hobbit residents, and yet we are seeing a mixture of people. Now, notice we haven't seen any humans out here, right? Presumably, there might be watchers who do patrols out here. In fact,
I think there's one human farm out here. I'm not sure. You're closer to Bree.
Okay. Yeah, let's see if we go down. Where are we right now? The map is so
take us right to the
unhelpful
bogs.
here. Right. Okay. Yeah. So there's the Midgewater Marshes, which we'll get to before too long.
If we cycle back around, we get to that big weird tree, and then we're going to see some human farms, I think.
Yeah. So which way are you saying? If we head south from here or north from here?
No, if we switch around this little tree here.
Oh, just follow the road down around here, you mean? Okay.
Yeah, right. Follow the road down around here.
Okay. So now we are... What are we... Let's see. What is this direction? This is pointing us towards... Oh, the skirmish camp. That's not that helpful. Okay, so we are... Okay,
See, we got the...
this tree, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, the yellow tree.
Yeah, and I don't know why it's perpetually yellow. That's generally a sign that it's sick.
Right. Right. Oh, yeah, we did skip Constable Bulger.
Yep. Oh, yeah, it's another Hobbit watcher. We got some unfriendlies out here.
Yes, lots of boars and bears.
Yeah,
who are relatively
take
hostile.
out some of these guys.
Yeah, well, we'll come back to this tree. But this is the sort of the wild area outside of town. And again, you can see just as we're coming onto the outskirts again. Where did Constable Bulger go? I want to see him. He's down around in the southern part, right?
Yeah, he's right around here.
As I recall from dim memories of
yep, this one. I think it's this one right here.
handing in quests.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah, there he is. Constable Bulger. And he is, in fact, wearing the same livery as the constable, that woman constable in town. So they do work together.
Mm-hmm.
JJ, he said, I miss Mickle Delving. I wonder what they're serving at the
Comb and Wattle. Oh,
so he's actually a Shire Hobbit, a displaced Shire Hobbit.
Well, Comb and Wattle is in Coombe, though.
Right. But JJ's saying that he was saying that he misses Mickle Delving. Yeah, there he is.
Yep, there he is. Yep.
There he is missing Mickle Delving.
So he's an immigrant.
Right. That's fascinating.
Huh.
Yeah. So
he's one of the little boys and girls that Gandalf spirited out here on an adventure, and he settled here.
Right. A Bulger? That seems unlikely, but apparently... I dare those ruffians to show their faces. Yes, I remember.
He's a spunky old fella, isn't he?
Yeah. With a full head of gray hair. He's been around.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, we could guess from the name Bulger that he was from the Shire. We know that there are some names that are in common, the natural names, right? But yeah, no, he's from Mickle Delving, apparently.
Natural names. You're still going to say that like a Hobbiton snob, aren't you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's the natural names, and then there's the botanical names. Yeah, and I agree, JJ, that the Comb and Wattle is a great tavern name. That's
yes,
it is really excellent. Does anyone recall anything of Constable Bulger's story? I mean, I know we interact with him at several points. I remember turning in quests with him and fighting off an insurgence of brigands with him at one point.
Yeah, I think one of the farmers was a victim of a protection racket. But
right.
But Bulger wasn't able to help him until he was ready to admit it and tell them when and where they were coming, I think.
Right.
So I think that was the issue.
Right, but in the context of that, we don't ever learn anything about his backstory, right?
Not the constables, no, just the poor fellow who was the victim of that scam.
Right. Right, and it's one of the Hobbit farmers in town, right, who's getting pressurized by the
brigands.
By the brigands, yeah. Right, those ruffians. I love the word ruffian, always have.
It's a great one.
Yeah. Okay. So, the depiction of Staddle in the game, in general, appears to be an acknowledgement of the, those lines we've been talking about quite a lot, for the last few weeks. That paragraph that talks about the big people and the little people generally keeping to themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
We know, of course, that there are hobbits from Staddle, right? Several of the hobbits at the, in the company are described as being from Staddle, and so they seem to have taken that and expanded that to actually have Staddle be an almost entirely hobbit, really an entirely hobbit community, and yet we can still see that we have these connections, right? The fact that the constables and watchers and merchants and things, many of them working in Staddle, are human, showing that they do work together and they are part of the overall community. That also seems to be fairly clear, right? That they, the people of the Bree-lands do sort of consider each other like one community group, not separate community groups.
At the same time, you can see there's a definite sort of sort of inverse version of Staddle in how Combs laid out.
Right.
Where it's all human houses, but we have some hobbits living there and doing jobs there.
Right.
So you can see they're living together, but one picks which one they're most comfortable with.
Yeah. They live apart, but they interact and work together. Seems to be the kind of culture.
They're almost like two commuter towns exchanging.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it does certainly seem that they're humans who commute to Staddle to work. Right. Yeah, absolutely. And we will see It's
got to be rough with all those bears on the road.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's a really interesting choice, though, to have this guy, Constable Bolger, the only member of law enforcement who is a hobbit in this town of hobbits, be an immigrant, right, from the Shire.
Mm-hmm. Well, the other one in Underhill is clearly a Bree native.
Right. Yeah, it's very interesting. Do we have time to go to Coombe? We can go to Coombe.
Yeah, it's just over the hill. Let's not cut through the bears for the benefits of those who are not able to do so.
All right.
Probably best if we go back to the main road over here.
Okay. Let's go back to the main road.
This is when I found out that hobbit lanterns are head height when you're on horseback.
Right. So we're going to go back right by the main road. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So we'll circle back around. I like the fact that they have a dock here by the Staddle Mare. I mean,
it's more like a fish. It's like a fishing pier.
I think it has to be for fishing, right?
Yeah. Don't see what else it'd be for unless they're floating paper boats.
Right. Presumably not swimming, and there's no evidence of boats.
Well, the Buckland hobbits swim. Do we know if the Bree-land hobbits hate swimming?
We don't know it for sure. The only reason that the Bucklanders seem to be different is because of their proximity to the river.
Well, you could say the same for stock, but they don't swim.
Yeah, well, they're less, weird.
They're more yeah.
Yeah. Because they're closer to Hobbiton, so they're more natural.
What kills most hobbits? Social stigma.
Okay, so here we are entering Coombe. Now, first we get, just as the lane right out from Bree was lined with hobbit holes, here in Coombe we get this one house, boarded up windows. This house looks like it's seen better days.
Huh. Definitely hard times already.
Yeah, beekeepers, though. Bees are still active.
Bees keep to themselves.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really the three different peoples of Bree, each minding their own affairs. The hobbits and the big people and the bees, apparently.
Well, this looks like it could be a watch house, though, because it's so close to the gate.
It does kind of look like that, but it's clearly been Oh, I don't know if abandoned, but okay. So here we have this same
flag.
Same flag, different colors though.
Oh yeah.
Huh.
But still the same 3 trees. Maybe the trees are supposed to represent Bree-land.
See, I was just thinking that too. Okay, theory. This is the Bree-land flag, right?
Oh.
Whereas the Boar one is the Bree town flag.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's why there's a hill here, and you've got the 3 trees growing together, like out of the top of the hill, right?
Or in the Chetwood sort of thing.
Yeah. So trees then would make a little bit more sense, right? Because the 2 dominant geographical features of the region are the Bree Hill and the Chetwood. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if I were the people of Archit, I'd be pretty mad. Why is it 3 instead of 4? Unless this is the flag of everywhere but Bree, unless this is the Stadel, Coombe, and Archit flag.
Could be.
Yeah, not really sure.
Well, Archit was pretty dang small, though. I don't know if it warrants its own flag.
Archit is pretty small. Well, we'll see. We'll see what we find for flags. Now we have a wooden
the town
palisade.
Is made up of ruins that nobody goes into.
Right, exactly. We have a wooden palisade, which is interesting by itself. Right. Now, Bree is, of course, a walled town, so this seems to be sort of following in the footsteps of Bree in a sense, right? But it's, I don't know. It's in a protected valley here, right? So
yeah, definitely.
They can just have the palisades along the main entrances. We see no hobbit holes, right? All human buildings.
Yep.
All through here. Mostly human people. Until we get to the law enforcement dude up here, who is...
Seems like he has a pretty big job.
On Underhill, yeah. He seems to have some authority. Notice his waistcoat is different, right?
Yeah.
He's got a fancier waistcoat than the other constables we saw.
It looks like interwoven leaves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This clearly suggests to me that he outranks Constable Bolger, for instance.
Mm-hmm. This place looks a little tougher and meaner. I get the feeling that Bolger was put on what they figured would be the easier job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Underhill's got to have some moxie and possibly some troops to help.
Yeah, and he does. I mean, so this guy, isn't this guy Constable too? Yes, he is. That's what I thought.
Yep.
And he's got the same, or close to the same, breastplate, waistcoat, whatever it is. What's the symbol within the, in those 2 quadrants? What is that?
I need to up my graphics. Hang on. Let's see. What do we got here?
Squirrels, wings, butterflies, manta rays,
raviolis. We're just yelling stuff now.
Horse heads? Wait, they are horse heads. JJ,
it is a horse head.
That's it. Yep. Okay, I see the head of the horse facing to the left, and this one to the right. There's the mane of the horse. Okay, they're horses.
Yep.
All right.
Constable Sageford. Maybe it's mounted police.
Except they're always dismounted, but
the stables are right over there.
Also, his horse heads are in different quadrants of the little shield symbol than Constable Bolger's were.
You get the feeling the Watchers just sort of wear their own family coat of arms and hang the rest,
Maybe. No, this is the same kind of pattern as both Constable Bolger and Constable What's-Her-Name, the human that we first saw at the entrance to Stadel.
Breeder.
Yeah.
Tangle Reed.
Tango Rush. That's it. Tango Rush.
Yeah.
Constable Tango Rush. No, I was trying to make out whether or not that could be a boar's head, JJ, but I can't
It
get
does
it.
look like a white horse head.
Yeah, I'm thinking that maybe the different quadrants are supposed to suggest rank, because there definitely was Bolger had different quadrants there. But in any case, both of them are different to Constable Underhill.
That's this guy. That's this guy. It's the same. He's got the 2 quadrants.
Wait, which? Oh, it's right, because there's another constable here, right?
Yep, same one. He just walked by.
Oh, right.
And he had the same one. It was northwest and southeast.
The mobile guy. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Oh, look, we got a hobbit living in a human dwelling.
Over here? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right over here. Her name is Townsperson.
Yeah, that's not very botanical.
No.
I should have just stayed at home instead of coming to this horrid place.
Oh, maybe
so
she's
she doesn't live here.
Maybe she's got a basket. Maybe she's on an errand.
Yeah, maybe she's selling. What is she selling? She got something in the basket. What's in the basket?
Cheese, bread. It's brown, whatever it is. Looks like bread and cheese
I think
with
it's
a knife.
bread, yeah.
Maybe she's visiting family.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, probably cheese. Probably cheese. Is Constable Ren JJ the one who's up the hill?
Yeah, might be.
All right, hang on. We have to go check that. We have to go inspect this. Okay. All right, so we still have this red tree banner all through the town, so it's clear that is the red version is associated with Coombe. All right, let's go check out Constable Ren.
If you're a developer watching this, by the way, please leave a note. We'd love to know what was going on when you guys designed these.
Yeah, whoa. What is it? Oh, okay, no, I see it is there. Hang on. It's a different color, though. Totally different.
Yeah, see, I swear these guys just make it up as they go.
Let's see. Oh, yeah, look at that. She's northeast and southwest.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think it's a rank thing.
Okay, yeah.
I think it's a rank thing. She's also wearing chainmail. Was the other guy wearing chainmail? I don't think he was.
I don't know. I think he was wearing cloth armor, but I'm not positive.
How about this guy over here?
Looks like scale
northwest
mail.
and southeast. Yeah, this guy is just like the dude down the hill, Mr. Guard here.
Well, it does imply Ren is in much higher rank than everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. She's a ranking, but except not like Underhill, who is
brought his own armor from home. I don't know.
Totally fancy. No, I think it's just a distinction of some kind.
It is very botanical looking with all the leaves.
Yeah. All right, hang on. I gotta go see. But okay, I was not really planning on investigating the livery of the constables quite this closely, but it is an interesting question. What is this sign?
I swear it looks like hops and barley. And
it does. It's very misleading, leading you to think that this is a brewery when it's not a brewery.
Craft beer hall.
Craft beer hall. Yeah, that must be what they mean. Yeah. I
went in there and all I got was this leather.
I suppose you could craft beer in there if
you're a cook.
If you're a cook. But
yeah, no, there's beer recipes and mead recipes.
Oh, there's the Coleman Waddle. Hang on, we gotta see. Excuse me, Constable Underhill. I need to see your. Okay, so what are those? Those are just leaves, right?
Looks like just intertwined leaves.
Yeah, and that's a face in the middle. Yeah, there's a face.
Oh, like a green man?
Yeah, something. And are those snake heads or just stems of...
It looks like some kind of ivy. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe so. The 6 leaves.
Yeah.
And then the weird face in the middle. And it's he is wearing chainmail, JJ, you're right.
Yeah. He definitely has some sort of brocade on the back.
Oh, yeah, fancy, but not much more than just fancy. No.
It looks more decorative than protective.
No queer
It's
iconography there.
Well, the other ones look like they could be armor. This is definitely a surtout.
Yeah, well, though he seems to be wearing chainmail under it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, okay, sorry. So resolving.
You guys can go in the training hall and see if there's anything later. I don't know. Right. Hey. Take notes. Report back.
All right, hang on. I do want to check out the training hall for a second.
Me and my big mouth.
I forgot. Hang on. What I'm looking for is...
Okay, horses.
Prison. Is there a prison in here?
Oh, I don't know.
Do we have any cells? Well, there's a door that looks like it might lead to the basement, but I don't think so.
This is definitely a training hall more than a guardhouse. Look at all the books everywhere.
Lots of books. Lots of people. A hobbit.
Lots of trainers.
She's a Brockhouse.
And a burglar trainer.
Yeah.
So she's a Bree-lander with that name then, right?
Yeah, but it's a natural name, so it's all good. And yes, there are bookcases all over the place in our highly literate Bree-land, as we were seeing last time.
None of them history books then.
Yeah. Okay, so all right, so just a training hall, not a prison. Just wanted to check and see if they had the. Yeah. I guess they ship all their inmates to Bree, right? So.
Well, there was a Stocks and Archet too.
Right. Yes. Right, but we haven't gotten to Archet yet. Okay, now we're not.
Well, it's not there now. I think it's all burnt down.
Oh well, right. Archet used to be more impressive than it is now. We're not seeing farms, just houses.
Nope. Some fishing too. There's like fishing pole.
Right.
Because we know there's a lake over there.
What, the Stadelmere?
Yeah.
Okay, so wait, what's up this
No,
road?
not the Stadelmere. This
the little
pond
side
over
lake.
here.
Yeah. Is this that's this, right? Where I'm headed towards?
Yep.
Right.
Oh, a few more houses over here. I thought there was just the one, but apparently there's a lot more than I remember.
Yeah, no, this is the compound of the shady woman, right?
Uh-huh. The dog breeder.
Yes, the dog breeder of dubious moral reputation.
Are these all our house or just this one with the cages?
I don't know. Yeah, are these outbuildings or are these just other folks' houses?
I think they're other houses.
This is a big building, though. It doesn't look much like a house.
Looks like a boarding house or an inn or something.
Exactly, or a barracks or some kind of public building.
Fishing lodge?
Fishing lodge.
Oh yeah, there's another one way back there.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely this little lake here is definitely enough that.
Yeah, you could fish here.
Well, I remember one of your first quests is to help somebody get their fishing pole back because it's their livelihood.
Right. So there is an implication of people actually fishing for a living. Even the Joy, what was her name? The fisher trainer in Stadel seemed to be, was like drying and selling fish.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So yeah, not quite sure what most of the people here in
lumber camp. They have a lumber camp.
There's
That's
a
what
lumber
it was.
camp. Right, the one up over the hill. Right. Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So we seem to have the people of Coombe getting their livelihood from the forest.
Uh-huh.
Also puzzled by the stumps here in the middle of town. that we see over there.
It's like they haven't finished building it.
Right, or like, why have they cut down a bunch of trees in the middle of town?
This is a really big house, too. No indication of what it's for.
Yeah, that's true. This looks like it could be like the house of the mayor of Coombe or something like that, right here in the square.
Uh-huh.
It looks like a private house with just a big house.
That inn looks like it could house the whole town.
Yeah, the Common Wattle is enormous. I think the Prancing Pony would start to feel a little threatened by the size of that thing.
Yeah, but it doesn't have the location.
Yeah. It's true.
It's not the lifeblood of any metropolitan park.
It just can't really compete.
You could tell it's the lifeblood of the town, though.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will. I should let people go now. Next time, we will continue on up towards Archet and then to the Chetwood, and sort of explore around there too. And then we'll sort of spread outwards to explore the rest of Bree-land from there. So, cool. All right. Well, I'm gonna let everybody go. Thanks for joining me again. Don't forget, I will not be here next week, so I will see everybody back again in a fortnight. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks for joining me on this epic exploration of The Lord of the Rings and of Standing Stone's video adaptation of Tolkien's story. If you are having even half the fun I'm having on this journey, I hope you will consider supporting the project by donating at signumuniversity.org/fund.